The Oregon School Boards Association OSBA Executive Committee meeting on Tuesday, February 13th, 2024 is called to order at 12:32 p.m. All members of the executive committee are present with the exception of Director, the immediate past president, Sonia McKinsey, who is excused. And with that, the next, welcome everybody and want to thank staff, both on vacation and working for making the time to come in here. I appreciate you too for this work, and we have a busy agenda. So next item on the agenda, approving the agenda. The chair entertains a motion.
President, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? It's been moved for the agenda to be approved as presented. Is there any objection? Seeing there's no objection, passes. Next item on the agenda is review February special meeting agenda. So I want to bring to your attention two PDFs that were sent by Linnell with this agenda on February 9th to the committee. The first PDF, the PDF that I want to bring your attention to is the one titled February 23rd. Thank you, Linnell, for sharing the screen. So this is, I just want to highlight a high level. This is part of our mission to onboard board members and to remind board members who have not been onboarded recently with some material that has been developed for onboarding and training board members, which has been defined as a goal for this board last year. With that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Emily, unless you want me to carry on with that.
No, I was thinking just because this agenda has become quite full today that we can just go through this really quickly. It's all kind of predetermined trainings that are mostly led by staff that you all can see here. And so a lot of it will be pretty high level of walking directors through how to access resources during the training piece of it. And so I don't think that we need to go through item by item unless you do, President. But you can just see on there, the one area that we do have some flexibility with the agenda is, Linnell, if you can scroll all the way down to the bottom. If there's something from this meeting that we need to add additional agendas, or we need additional agenda space for this meeting on the 23rd, we have a staff have talked about that we could move the director department overviews to a meeting at a later date if we need. That's where we have a little bit of wiggle room. This is designed as a 4-hour training for the day. And so it is going to be pretty packed with information for the directors. And as I mentioned in previous emails, we've asked that all directors attend so that everybody can have kind of a base level understanding.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions, comments?
I would just say this looks like a very, very full agenda. And so if it is possible to move part of it, that might be good. You know, we have 4 hours, but I assume there will be some discussion. So I'm certainly supportive of whatever needs to happen in that regard.
Thank you, Chris.
Millie, Dawn? Good to go. Cool. So just want to know, thank you. Really, this is very comprehensive. And if anyone reaches out to you, officers, please reiterate the message from Emily. It's please attend, even if this is your second, fifth, seventh year. It's going to be important for us to all have situational awareness. And frankly, when we have our conversations with newer board members, we can remind them of something we just heard about. So it's really important for us to do this training together. And Emily, I understand we're recording it. So hopefully if there is any board members who may join in for any reason in the middle of the year, we could offer that to them to listen to it.
Yes, and we will also, we're talking about how we would handle if we had to appoint several board members like we did this last summer, probably offering this again midway through the year so that folks aren't going a whole year without being trained.
You know, Chris?
Yeah, my question is, I'm just asking the question, but also maybe suggesting that we would set out an expectation that there will be limited discussion or no, you know, maybe very specific questions directed, but I would say that this should not be considered this is not a discussion meeting, it's an informational meeting, and there would be just specific directed questions as the presenters would maybe invite a question at the end or something. I just hate us to get bogged down.
Absolutely. It's not an action, and if there's any possible developments or invitations for changes, it goes through the course of proposing an agenda item for future meetings. That's a very good note. All right, on that note, if there's no objection, we're gonna move with that direction that Emily has mentioned regarding the agenda with the flexibility if needed. Next item on the agenda is March 9th. It's another PDF, the 8 a.m. on Saturday meeting. I will bring it to your attention, the PDF that is also on the screen. Is there anything that you would like to highlight, Emily?
A lot of this is items that were moved from the January meeting that just kind of need to happen, like approving the fee structure, the OSBA investment report. You'll get information on the summer board conference and annual convention planning that will be happening. You'll get a mid-year report or a quarterly report from me. And then the OSBA policy adoption. So the policy committee should have time to meet with Spencer and Haley prior to the meeting to have policies to put forward to the board to take action on. And then an update on the governance committee because they won't meet before the board meeting or before the March 9th board meeting. The one area that I do want to draw your attention to is the facilitated discussion with Salam. So I've continued to work with him. We've sent out the information to the board asking them to prioritize the top opportunities of where they would like to see the board focus on and kind of just continue that discussion. This will be a virtual meeting. Is our March meeting was already planned to be virtual. So depending on what comes back with those results from the board and kind of designing what that looks like, we might need a little bit of flexibility there as well. So just drawing your attention to that how much time we need for that and whether or not it makes sense to maybe have that time with Salam be in person and add on a little bit to the legislative policy committee meeting that's happening in person. So we just wanted to get this agenda in front of you all so that you can see it. Let us know if there's anything major that you think is missing. But the one outstanding piece there is the piece with Salam and what he'll be focusing on and how much time he needs with that.
Thanks, Emily. Questions, discussion notes from officers? Don?
I would just say that if there's a way, when you talk to Salam, if there's a way that the executive team or myself can help facilitate this, I'm a little concerned with it being online and chats and texts and stuff. If there's something that you think that would be helpful for us to do, please let us know. I think we know some common things, but I want to make sure that this is productive and it doesn't become unproductive.
Thank you for that, Dawn. I appreciate that.
Noted, Don. Thank you. And definitely maybe Emily and Haley, I can check in with Salam with that if you would like to, and definitely I'll lean in standard procedures around pausing if needed and deferring to the full group if needed around discussion, keeping the discussion to the business, and putting anything on the parking lot if necessary. But if there's any additional thoughts, please let me know, and maybe I'll discuss those with Salam to have a solid plan to navigate this over the Zoom. Probably also in terms of chat, we can check in around the chats, whether we keep it open or not, or remind the board members around the use of chats as part of the public meeting.
I
Next
have
up.
no concerns over the chat, so thank you, because sometimes people put in some passive aggressive type comments and it, it isn't, yeah.
No, yeah, I hear you loud and clear. Yeah, we can maybe, Haley, we can check in around the settings of the meeting, and if we want to decide how to do it, whether only co-hosts receive the chats, and just to make sure also we ensure compliance with public meeting law, because any discussions will be there. Linnell, I'm gonna stop and say, please go for it.
Just let me know if you'd like to disable the chat during the meeting, and we can do that.
Yeah, I would say probably if there's no objection, let's disable it. Maybe allow it only for the hosts, and the host will be staff and myself and maybe president-elect. If that's okay with everybody, I think that's if that is a possibility, Linnell, let's do it. If not, let's just disable chat, and everybody has either my number or yours. They can text if there's any technical issues.
Okay.
No objection to that plan, team? Awesome. Cool. Any other, so see, there's no further discussion. We'll have flexibility around the agenda as stated by Emily, but we'll move forward with this agenda that we have in front of us. Any other further discussion? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda, after discussing February and March review meetings, is the policy committee update information. I just want to say thank you, Spencer, for the leadership and the initiative. Thank you, staff, for doing that. I want to apologize that hindsight's 2020, but last year probably I should have had initiative, but now we're learning. We got to have a schedule. We got to have a plan, and this is what you train school boards to do. So I'm gonna stop there and say thank you for the initiative, and Mike is yours on the really good plans that we have ahead. Both of you and Chris Cronin as the chair of the policy committee.
Yeah, I'll just echo my gratitude to Spencer and Haley also for kind of working together to get this going, and also to my cohort Don and also Chris Howitt. We've had some discussion, and we're getting ready to have a meeting before the March meeting, and looking forward very much to what Spencer has for us. And Spencer, I'm just gonna let you take it away and kind of fill in the executive team with what you have proposed.
Yep, I'll be very brief, and I just want to make sure this was recorded, so in a few months we can replay those gratitude pieces that you wanted this. I promise you. No, it should be really good. I'm excited to have a full committee. Towards the end of the year, we didn't have a committee to work. The committee kind of dissolved away. So I'm excited to have a committee to work with. We've got a list of several policy, well, two pieces. One, there's some policies that we really want to take care of sooner rather than later. Part of that's due to bylaws changes. Part of that's due to legal changes that we just need to make some updates. And so we've got a list of policies that were already on our radar as far as things that we want to get updated. When we meet as a policy committee, we'll identify priorities there. Some of those, though, we can probably just hold off until we do the whole policy review, which is something that we will do this year. We'll set up a timeline. We'll figure out what works best for committee participants so that we will go through the entire policy manual during the year. And it's going to be really fun, super exciting, way shorter than a school district rewrite for any of you that have been involved in that. I think our policy manual, I want to say it's 26 pages. My goal is to keep it under 30. No, but so it's not nearly as big as a full one, but it is important that we go through and do a rewrite there. So we'll meet as a committee. I actually just got an email from Colleen Allen, who set up a doodle poll. So I'll send that out, and we'll do our best to get a meeting where everyone can attend, establish some of those priorities, get the policies ready to come before the board in March, and also establish a timeline or at least a plan on order and everything for the policy rewrite.
Questions, comments?
Sounds wonderful. And you're bringing the snacks, right, Spencer?
To the virtual meeting, yes, I am. If we do, and that may be something that we discuss, it may be worth tacking, some of our meetings on some meetings where we may already be in person. And if we do meet in person, absolutely, I will bring snacks. You tell me what you want, and my 9-year-old loves to bake, so
Other questions, comments? So, Spencer, I just want to say thank you. When I am in Corvallis and we have a policy rewrite and I suggest something, usually most of my suggestions need positive, constructive feedback. Some of them get to change, but either change, always they say, let's check with Spencer from OSBA. So I just want to remind us that any thoughts about changes or developments or feedback that we may hear from the policy committee or the board, we need to hear that feedback. Hey, we need to check with Spencer from OSBA. You are the experts, and your expertise is not only doing the work providing us with those policies, but really you are the experts in policy review. And please know that we want to lean on your expertise and frankly the pushback on possible unintended consequences if a board adopts path A over B. I know it's an awkward place, but you are our advisor, and I want to just emphasize our gratitude for that, and want to encourage you to continue that leadership that you do. And thanks for all what you do.
And just to tack onto that, the OSBA policy review will be really no different. There will be policies that we're going to send to Bob for outside legal review. Some of them may not need that, but I'll work closely with Emily and Haley and the committee as far as, do we want legal review, outside legal review on those? And when we do that, we'll go that route. So
Fantastic. Emily?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I think the one thing, tacking on to what Spencer said is, and Bob's going to do a very short training on the difference between a school board and a nonprofit board. And I think that'll be especially helpful to have Bob's guidance in there around policies that maybe we don't necessarily need, or they need to be different because we're not a school board in this situation. So I think that will be important through this process too.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Seeing there's no further policy committee updates. Thank you, Chris and Spencer. Next up is the governance committee update, which is the committee in charge of the bylaws reviews and proposals for the for the board and then full membership for adoption. Haley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. So Emily has designated me as the staff person in charge of the governance committee, so lucky me. Two of those things that the governance committee is in charge of are the bylaws, any bylaws revisions, and also the executive director evaluation process. And we have, I'm just going to remind you that we have 2 executive directors under contract with OSBA right now. So we'll come back to that in a moment. With respect to the bylaw revisions, my plan is to have Bob at the governance committee meeting, which is scheduled for March 15th. Bob and I have not connected on that yet, so we're going to kind of talk through whether he needs to be at that first meeting or maybe at a subsequent meeting. But previously, there's been some legal questions around different items in the bylaws, so I just want to make sure that we have him available so we don't have to run into this issue of going to get legal opinions and then scheduling additional meetings and that sort of thing. So current plan would be that Bob would be at that March 15th governance committee meeting to be available for bylaw questions. And the other piece of this, kind of coming back to the executive director evaluation process. So this is going to be somewhat complicated because we have 2 executive directors and they both have contracts with the organization that require that they be evaluated by June 30th. Starting with Emily, because that process is going to be it's going to be complicated but less complicated. We don't have an evaluation process set for Emily because we didn't anticipate any, Emily being in this role. So there's no process set for evaluating her this year. So the governance committee is going to have to figure out what the process is for evaluating Emily before June 30th. So that's one of the things they'll need to do. They will also need to develop the process for Emily's evaluation next year, which is kind of the normal process. Usually the governance committee gets together and puts together the process for the coming year. So they're going to have to work through create two processes for Emily. For Jim, the governance committee already met last spring and developed a process that then was recommended to the full board in June, and the full board adopted an evaluation process for Jim in June. In kind of preparing for the governance committee, I saw that plan that the board put in place, and a couple of the things that are required as part of that process is an update from Jim in January, which is now past due and was not provided. And then there's another update from Jim expected in May, according to this timeline. So at this point, Jim is still employed, so we just have to assume, you know, he'll be employed still in May. So we're going to the board is either going to need to change what it is already adopted as the process for Jim, or continue down the same path that they've already adopted. And so if the board decides they want to continue with the process they already adopted for evaluating Jim last June, then our legal counsel will have to reach out to Jim and have him provide the June update that's past due, and then the update in May. And then we would go through, I think it's a survey process that the board adopted last June, goes out to the board, and then Jim would be present in an executive session in June to receive that feedback, just the same way it's been done in the past, assuming he's still employed in June and assuming the board doesn't go in a different direction. And if Jim is still employed in June, we're going to have to develop an evaluation process for him for the coming year too. So this is a really complicated situation with two executive directors and kind of not knowing when Jim's employment might end. So this update that I'm giving you right now is the same update that I will be giving the full board at the coming meeting, which is before the governance committee meeting. And I'll pause there because I say there's a question.
Haley, and maybe this is too early, but can you give us some ideas of pros and cons of asking Jim, or of continuing to follow the evaluation procedure that was set in place in June, given that Jim is, you know, as of November 13th, he's not actively doing any of the work that was expected of him. I guess in my mind, I'm having a hard time figuring out what he would report. But I'd like to hear some input on that.
So, Chris, I appreciate the question, and I really wish that I could give you an answer to that question, but I think that what you're asking me is for legal advice on the executive director's employment situation. And so I think that if we're going to have questions of that nature, we would need the attorney that's representing the organization to weigh in on that. And so what I would suggest is that if you have questions of this nature, I'm guessing other board members will have questions of that nature. So perhaps we should have our attorney at that next board meeting to answer questions like that about pros and cons of continuing forward with the previously adopted plan, adopting a new plan, and kind of running you through those different options. So I apologize that I'm not answering your question, but that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Haley. So with that, I'll move with a question to the full board. Is there any objection of having us? Well, do I hear and with thumbs up straw polling, do I hear an intention that we would like to have that dialogue discussion with proper notice and proper setting for evaluating different paths, or do we want to continue on the prescribed path without that discussion? So if you feel we should have a discussion with organization attorney, I'll open up for that for discussion right now. Am I hearing a yes, overwhelming yes or no? So just to make sure we have two clear pathways, which one do we want? And Haley, help me out if that's clear. And they are the distinct pathways. Number one, evaluating options, and will require proper notice for council. Number two is stay course and do the evaluation as prescribed in the contract, despite of the circumstances we are in. These are the
Correct.
two options executive committee has. The second option still may continue to be the option we go through if we have a discussion. But we can just go there without the discussion. So am I hearing, do we want a discussion? Done? I'll go down and then Chris.
I think we need to have the discussion because along the lines of the questions Chris has, I have some questions as well. That Haley probably can't answer, like it just seems like if usually as when you're evaluating them, it's to have them improve for the next year. And it seems like going through the process is kind of a moot point, except we legally have to do it. So I have a lot of questions about it. I think it would be, yeah, I think it would be better to do that.
Sounds good. So Chris, unless you feel comfortable with the same direction.
Yeah, I do. I think that's what our board will be most comfortable with. To be honest, I'm a little bit just have a tendency to think, well, let's just go ahead with the process and evaluate with what we have. Because we could do that. We set a process up, we could evaluate with what we have, and that would we could recommend that to our board. But I'm thinking that they will have the same questions, and we probably need to allow it. So
Sounds good. So if there's no objection, Emily.
Sorry, just had a clarifying question. Haley, in your mind, would this happen at the March meeting? Or would it have
Yes.
to happen sooner? Okay, thank
It
you.
would happen at the March meeting, and we already have an agenda item there for governance committee update, so I would imagine there would be an update in open session, and then if we were going to have an attorney there, there would be an executive session to talk, to give the board legal advice on how to proceed.
So I'm gonna have two possible pathways in that pathway, if that's okay, and I wanna have your opinion on. We can go for the March meeting. We're talking about March meeting, full board March meeting, right?
Correct.
So we can have a full board March meeting, executive session, Q&A, and then either recommendation or different pathways to adopt, and then move forward with an action at the same meeting. Or, and I don't want to add to the executive committee more burden, or the executive committee to receive that counsel, to be provided with recommendations, to make a recommendation to the full board. Then the full board, when it meets with the executive session, receives the legal counsel and also receives a recommendation from the executive committee. I can see it happen both ways. The executive committee between meetings have the prerogative to deliberate and provide recommendations. But that's an extra time on us. So I want to ask you all and staff and legal counsel, how do you feel? Whether we should go to executive committee with the full board without meeting again, or should we, the group of five, meet first and provide a recommendation? Chris.
well, I appreciate the thoughtful suggestion, and I think either way could work. And I understand perhaps efficiency with the executive committee meeting first. I guess my instinct is that we probably, I think that we need to give opportunity for the full board to hear directly from council. I think that that's probably the right thing to do in this case.
Yes, and absolutely. And my suggestion is either way, definitely the full board will hear from the council, but should we hear from council first and have a recommendation to the board? And frankly, if I may lean on counsel, sorry, Bob. My question to you is, when you provide your counsel, would you have distinct options for us to, for the full board to choose? Or not? If not, I feel the executive committee really needs to deliberate on providing recommendations for the full board. And that's my personal view.
Well, I'm not sure that I understood the question, but let me take a shot at it, and then you tell me if I'm engaging. I think typically this is my approach to public meetings, and executive sessions in particular. I would want to have some sort of written document from the lawyer that kind of lays out the issues and the options for whatever decision-making body is going to consider them. That kind of forms the legal basis for having the executive session in the first place. Whether you do it in 2 steps or 1, I think is really a judgment call on your part in terms of what you think your board would want to go through. Whether they'd want to have that cooked by the executive committee before it got to them, or whether they really need to be engaged in the first instance in receiving the information and making the decision. Did that come close at least to answering your question?
It does
Okay.
very well. Okay, so Haley and then Don.
Thank you. I was just going to mention, I know Emily's going to give an update later on just the legal fees that have been incurred, but maybe just thinking about the extra expense and having an attorney at 2 separate meetings.
Thank you. Don?
I agree with what Haley said, but also I feel like we have a lot of really intelligent people on the board, and they may ask a question that the 5 of us wouldn't think of, and that might change the way my recommendation would be. So I'd hate to recommend something and then during discussion have something else come up and then be like, oh, never mind. So for me, I would rather not have a recommendation until we can have full discussion and I can hear different ideas and thoughts.
Thanks, Don. So it seems to be, unless Emily Smith, you have a different direction. It seems that the consensus of the executive committee that we will have in the March full board meeting, an executive session, and potentially an agenda item following the executive session pertaining to the subject. Awesome. Back to you, Haley. Sorry, that was good. But back to you if there's anything else.
That's it. That's all I needed. So thank you, unless there are other questions about the governance committee.
Seeing none, thank you, Haley. And next up, acting executive director update, Emily.
Yeah, this is just really quick. I just wanted to touch on what Haley mentioned and provide an update for you all, kind of where we are in the incurred expenses from the investigation and the legal, so including the original investigation by Attorney Kimura all the way up until now, till the end of January, including the mediation services with Salam. We're at about $95,000 that was not budgeted for this year. And so I just want to, I believe it's part of my operating agreement, to update you all and keep you informed when we are doing large expenses outside of the budget. And I just don't want there to be any surprises for you all as we navigate these really challenging issues. And I know that a lot of that hasn't, there hasn't really been opportunity. It's just sort of, this is a path we need to go down. But I do definitely just want you all to be mindful of that and aware of that that's where we are right now in the process. And we do know that the investigation of the investigation still has some more work to be done. So that was just my really brief update. You'll also see it in the full board. We'll see it and it'll be called out in the next monthly report that Chris Davidson sends out to the full board.
Thanks, Emily. Much appreciated. Any questions, comments? Really want to appreciate your updates, Emily, and it's a good reminder for all of us to really ensure the fiscal health of the organization as we make those decisions and policy directions. So if there's no further questions, yes, Chris.
Oh, it's in relation to this. Speaking of the investigation, do we have, we probably don't have a sense of the additional costs that will be at this point. Maybe we have a guess. Do we have any update on when that might be concluded at this point? I realize we might not, but I just want to ask.
So I can take that. Again, I don't have very helpful answers probably, but yeah, the last update I saw, we did not have a timeline. So it's just continuing is all I have for you. And in terms of expense, yeah, I would just completely be guessing. I think if I were to say, because the first bill we saw was large, but I think that included a lot of things that aren't going to happen in the future. So those bills might be not as large. So I can't really speculate on how much it's going to be going forward.
Well, thank you, but that's not the answer I wanted, Haley.
All right, thanks, Haley. Any other questions, comments? See none. The executive committee will enter into executive session. I'll read the notice and after that we will stop recording, but I'll read the notice first. The executive committee will meet in executive session to consider attorney-client privilege information or records that are otherwise exempt by law from public inspection pursuant to Oregon's revised statute 192, section 335, subsection 9, subsection A, and ORS 40225 information. And this is pursuant also to Oregon revised statute 192660 subsection 2 subsection F. Attorney Robert Steringer from Herring Long PC will be in the meeting, and any staff authorized by the director are going to be able to remain in the meeting. Others will be excused. Linnell, we may stop the recording. And Emily, feel free, and Haley, feel free to give direction about which staff to remain the meeting. The executive committee concluded its executive session, and now it's reconvening in its public meeting. The officer, Vice President Emily Smith, has been excused. And right now, the next item on the agenda is, I lost my PDF. Director complaints, action. The president will entertain any motions. Chris.
Mr. President, I move to delegate authority to myself and Dawn to work with legal counsel to propose a resolution to resolve complaints and concerns from director to director or director.
Is there a second?
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing there's no further discussion, Chris, could you repeat the motion for the record?
Yes, Mr. President, I move to delegate authority to Dawn and myself to work with legal counsel to propose a resolution to resolve complaints and concerns from director toward another director.
On the motion, is there any objection? Seeing there is no objection from members present, the motion passes. For the good of the order. So the next item for the good of the order is really something I would like to introduce. In Corvallis, we call it future agenda items and comments. It's really directed to any matters that may have arise to executive committee directors who would like to pass it on to staff or the committee to consider in the future. So it's just to maintain transparency. If there's anything that you would like to discuss in the future, we have an opportunity for us to raise it. Of course, you always can raise it through email as well to the executive director and myself. our executive director and the acting and the president-elect. So just want to leave that there open, and if there is no objection, we're going to keep continuing that for the good of the order item for executive committee members to raise potential future agenda items, not to be discussed immediately, but to be raised as something to be considered with the understanding that we may need to prioritize things. Bob?
I just want to check to see whether I can be excused for a 2 o'clock meeting.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Our excuse and appreciate your service.
Good to
Thank
see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
And on that note, if there's no other items for the good of the order, I would like to excuse the full meeting. There's no objection. We are excused, or we are adjourned.